Damien Barrett and welcome to Access All Areas. Lots to talk about after the opening round, and the man with me to dissect all the football issues is Matthew Lloyd. Lloydie, welcome. Nice to have you.
Thanks, Damo. Great to be part of it.
And obviously we're thinking of our good mate Gary Lyon and wishing him all the best. Lloydie, let's kick off with yesterday's blockbuster clash. An absolutely cracking game.
It's just about the game of the year every season, Damo. It's Easter Monday, book it in, and two heavyweights. It would not surprise me if that's a grand final preview in a sense, because those two, I think, will be there come the business end of the season.
Has there ever been a better debut performance for a new club anyway than Paddy Dangerfield's?
It was unbelievable, Damo, and you watch this vision and it's a complete game. The explosive power from Dangerfield yesterday was something that I've rarely seen in a footballer. I know we sometimes have short memories, but he was doing the little things. He was exploding out. They just couldn't run with him. I think the biggest Achilles heel of Hawthorn is their leg speed, and he really exposed that yesterday, Damo. It was, if he had to kick those 3 goals in the last quarter, it was one of the most complete games that I've ever seen from a midfielder.
We've seen big names move clubs before, and since 2007 we've seen Judd, Ablett and Franklin move. They haven't yet achieved what they set out to do, and that is win a premiership. Obviously he's one game into it, Paddy Dangerfield, but on what you saw yesterday and what you've seen of Dangerfield in the past, is he the best mix out of those combinations?
Well, if he can drag them over the line to a premiership, there's no doubt about that. At 26 years of age, Damo, so he's in the prime of his career, and I was reported yesterday that they were $13 million in debt. They've raised $10 million in recent times. A lot of it's off the back of Paddy Dangerfield.
The Hawks, look, they came back, and at one stage they were in front again late-ish in the third quarter, three-quarter time. Did you see some things there yesterday that worried you by way of what could happen in 2016?
Not to say they're a premiership threat, because they were 4 wins and 4 losses last year, Damo. So I think that the problem for them is they lost Suckling, Hale and also Brian Lake at the end of last year. And then once you throw in Roughead, Bradley Hill, all those type of players, well, then their depth is really going to be in question, because those players haven't been exposed to big match football in recent years.
I've got a theory that Lake is going to, as the season unfolds, Lloydie, become the one that, and time over again, should we have maybe just somehow kept him on? Because he wanted to go around again, and he was so good for them in the 3 years he had. Yeah,
it's interesting. Alistair Clarkson, with him, I think he's looking to probably do what Chris Scott's done in a sense, and phase players out at certain stages, so you don't want them all going at the same time.
Disastrous weekend for Collingwood on so many fronts. Swan out potentially for the entirety of the season. Sidebottom to miss suspension-wise. 80-point loss to the Sydney Swans there in Sydney, and obviously the becoming the face inadvertently of the illicit drugs issues in the AFL.
Yeah, it was such a positive pre-season, Damo, and they got off to the worst start possible. I want to ask you about last night, AFL 360, and Nathan Buckley and also Chris Scott, the Geelong coach, really attacked Mark Robinson on the integrity of his story. What did you make of that?
Look, they've got every right to query him the way they did, and if I am Chris Scott and Nathan Buckley, I'm doing the same thing. What I will defend Mark on is his right to write that story. But what I can't defend, and what is emerging now, Lloydie, is the figure that he effectively plucked out of being the 11 players. It was a pluck. It wasn't the actual figure, and both Nathan Buckley and Eddie Maguire have said that number is not right, and Robbo himself couldn't back that figure up. So what we've got here is a use of a figure which gives the story a reason to give it a headline, and that's what is very hard to condone in Robbo's shoes right now.
I think this would have affected them, but not to the 80-point margin. So I think that's a cop-out, 80 points. But I just want to ask you about Dane Swan, Damo. You're close to him. Do you think he's the type of player with a big rehab ahead of him, maybe not playing again to walk away at season's end?
Look, until he has the surgery and he gets the feedback on how that surgery went, he's not going to be able to answer that question. What I think I know about him is that he will try to play another game of footy, be it this year or next year. And it's unlikely, isn't it, that diagnosis that it's going to be this year. But if I'm Collingwood, I'm giving him another contract on a reduced rate for next year, and let him make the decision himself if that's indeed the way it's going to go.
I agree with you 100% on Dane Swan. The Collingwood tall players, well, it's an issue for them. Everyone gets probably romanced in with the Collingwood midfield, but I think this is an issue for them, both in the forward end and the back end. This was their tall timber on the weekend, just 6 marks between them. Heath Grundy did a number on Travis Cloke. You know, I give Moore and Galt a bit of credit because they're young players. Jared Witts, he's just not aggressive enough, Damo. So can they do enough at either end? You've got Nathan Brown, always injured in defence as well. So there's a lot of concerns on field for the Pies, even though it is only round 1.
So does Mason Cox come into immediate calculations for Friday night?
Not to replace Cloke, but the Galt-Cox proposition, I'd give them another few weeks. But just on Travis Cloke, he is just bereft of any confidence. And I've been there a number of times, but I look at Travis Cloke with his goal kicking. he can lose it so quickly. And I look at him on the weekend, he was running away from contests at times. He used to be a hard-working aerobic animal. Didn't see that on the weekend. So his career isn't at the crossroads, Damo, but it's getting very close to thinking, well, he was never going to get back to the player that he was.
When you say running away from contests, not reading it, or just not prepared to run to it?
Having no confidence in his own ability to beat Heath Grundy in a contest, and that's what I saw the other night, which was sad, and they had to throw him into the ruck to get him in the game. Yeah.
Luke Parker returned, Lordy, in stunning fashion. It was as good a performance as you'd see from a midfielder, and he's one who can go forward, and he's done this in the past too, but go forward and take the big clunk down forward.
Well, he's become their best midfielder, and that is a big call when you've got players like Josh Kennedy, Kieran Jack, those guys in the mix. But what I say about Travis Clark, this guy's the opposite. He's just hungry, he's desperate, he's confident. He'd look at a Pendlebury and a Swan and say, I'll beat you, I'll take you on. And I've been fortunate enough to be involved with him at junior football, and he's a player you just want as part of your culture.
Yep. Back onto the Victorian Footy Club perspective, Lordo, the Western Bulldogs number that they did on Fremantle was quite stunning, wasn't it? Particularly in the opening half of that first quarter.
Well, we all talk about the Bulldogs' pace and their foot skills and Stringer and Bontempelli, but the toughness is underestimated. When a team comes to your own Dunhill, I used to love being part of this when I played at the Bombers. When you got a Fremantle or a West Coast, you'd say, get the home crowd involved, let's attack them early. And that's exactly what the Western Bulldogs did. It was 4-0 in 10 minutes, game over, and Ross Lyon made the call. They came for a street fight, and we came for a Sunday stroll. They were all over them.
Two questions on the Bulldogs quickly. Is their game style maintainable throughout 23 weeks of home and away in these finals?
And is it
transportable as the second part of that question?
I'm not
to the MCG.
They'll be better this year, but I'm not sold on that just yet.
Okay. The Dockers were a serious worry first up, weren't they? 5 goals, 8, the total score.
They were, and it was their effectiveness by foot too. And I think the Bulldogs spooked them a little bit. You look at this, some of their players, Damon, I think the time's come for maybe a Michael Barlow, a Clancy Pearce, that maybe it's time to phase those guys out. They've been great for Ross Lyon, but I'm not sure they're the answer anymore. I just hope he doesn't drop Lockie Weller this week. Right. I want to see Blakely come in. Yep. I want to see Langdon, the brother of Tom Langdon, his name's Ed, come in. It's time to expose some players like John Longmire did with some young Sydney players. Otherwise, I think too many teams are going past them.
Okay. Stevie Johnson, Lord, he played his first game for GWS against Melbourne at the MCG. It was a typical Stevie Johnson game, wasn't it? Kicked a couple of goals, missed a couple of goals. We're going to show some vision here, which is isolated. To me, this is Stevie J. This is what GWS got him in to do. Now, to me, with Stevie J, you take the good with the bad, but clearly his new teammates are not happy. You can point out here, they're calling out for the ball when they were thinking they should get it.
I don't cop that, Damo. I don't cop that at all. Watch the hands go in the air and watch Nathan Jones' reaction after this one. When you're a player, if I'm playing for the Giants and I see Nathan Jones doing this, it demoralises me because I think, they're all over us and he's not playing for the team. So it's like the Ackermanis handstands. It's all good when your team's winning, like Geelong won for a long time. But when you're not winning and you're a team on the rise, that's not acceptable.
He's kicked 450 goals and they've recruited him to kick goals. I reckon he's got every right to take those shots at goal.
They haven't just recruited him to kick goals. They've recruited him to help build a culture and they expect him to coach. So I don't know how you coach and say, give a handball next time when you haven't done it yourself.
Okay. Clayton Oliver in the same game, Lordy, for Melbourne, their prize #1 draft pick in last year's edition of it. First centre clearance, bang, out of the middle.
It was a bold selection. He was a bolter. He was a Morris medalist, obviously, so he's a dominant player. But often those players don't get drafted because they're the mature age that are never going to develop too much, or they're the mature body type players. But he took it in his stride. Look at this, Callan Ward, a gun player, and he just outbodied him. So, along with Brayshaw, who can come into the side, Christian Petrarca, then you've got, obviously, Jack Viney, who was best on ground. They are building something there at Melbourne, which I'm really excited about.
You like it, don't you?
I do.
You also like what could happen with this next guy, Charlie Dixon. Big man who really imposed himself on this game when it needed to be done, Lord. He missed some goals, but took some big clunks. Now, admittedly, he's playing on Sam Fisher here, but it was a good start, wasn't it?
Well, Jay Schultz was never going to take them too far. Jay Schultz is a half-forward flanker. This man is someone you can sit the ball on the head to. He's a Tom Hawkins. He's a Josh Kennedy. So the jury's out on his kicking and all those types of things. He's got to get fitter. But the back half of the season, I expect him to come into his own.
OK, it took a while for Port to get rid of the Saints in that game. Are they still a tease?
At this stage, they are still a tease. I think that 2 years ago, what we saw, they took the competition by storm. They surprised teams. They were worked out. Time will tell whether that's the case again this year.
I thought it was an extraordinary round of football for players playing their first game in the big time. And Jacob Weitering was one, Lloyd. He really good against Richmond, but so confident he was able to take on a two-time Coleman medalist when he sprayed his kick.
I'd love to know what Brendan Bolton has said to him after this, but I don't mind it.
Yep.
Damo, I don't mind it. This kid plays like a 100-game player, and he's now mouthing off like a 100-game player. So I'm sure Jack Riewoldt probably got into him early in the game. What did you make of it?
Look, I like it. I mean, people might say that you maybe should serve your time, but that kid's just about there already, isn't he?
I want to ask you what you thought of this one, Damo. Nathan Wilson. So I believe he's watched the AFL DVD the night before the game about the deliberate out of bounds, and he's thinking, wait, where is it? Where is it?
Well, it would have been, wouldn't it? Would have been.
But you've got to wait for it to go out of bounds first, Damo. That was the problem for Nathan Wilson.
Tell me, you know Leon Cameron, what would he be saying to him on this effort?
Oh, he'd be saying, kid, get that ball out of bounds. The boundary line is your best friend as a defender. That is not on. But Wilson was one of their better players on the weekend, so cut him some slack.
We're talking about some good debuts. I think you had a good one on your first Access.
Thanks, Damo. I've really enjoyed it.
And thanks for watching Access All Areas. We'll see you next week back on our usual day. That, of course, is Monday. Have a good week. Goodbye.